I'm going to build this three-way castle jointed pot holder using Japanese joinery. This allows my cactus to bask in the warm rays of sun, but it wasn't always like this. Look at him standing in the shade, yearning for a mere more 10 centimeters of height. On my table he takes up way too much space. On the radiator it would be far too warm for him. On the windowsill he blocks my curtains. Finally, a great project to start Japanese joinery. I've always wanted to try out my Japanese saws, which I received this Christmas. I only have some basic woodworking knowledge, so this is going to be a serious challenge. So let's get started building this flower pot. I have the wood, a precision Japanese blade, a metal ruler, some wood clamps, and the plan. But most importantly, I have 12 pieces of square stock cut to perfect length, 8 smaller and 4 larger pieces. You have no idea how difficult it was to make these. I'm going to be using these 3 planks. As you can see, 2 of them are kind of banged up and rough looking, and one of them I've already prepared. Let me show you how I turn these old pieces of wood into something that is usable. In my last video, I made a simple router jig that is used to correct the twist in lumber. So, I'm going to continue with this idea and mill these logs flat. I'm going to be fixing them to my table using these screws. I've countersunk them and also pre-drilled the holes for the screws. This means that there will be a very small amount of tension in the wood. Hopefully this will eliminate all the twisting problems that I had in my last project. As you can see, the wood has high spots and low spots. I want to get rid of them and get a consistent piece of lumber. I've set my depth and started milling. Many people have suggested that I use a hand plane to do this, but I think that with my limited experience and amateur woodworking skills, this is the most consistent way for me to get these planks flat. And even though it may take a bit longer, it works fine for me. I'm basically copying a reference surface from these 2 aluminum extrusions onto the piece of wood, and this makes it flat. After I'm done with the router, there's a bit of cleanup that is needed. As you can see, I couldn't route the screw heads, so I'm going to take them off with a chisel. I am also going to use some sandpaper to take off any tear out that may have happened during my shoddy routing. But in the end, I'm going to end up with nice flat pieces of wood that have 2 parallel planes in reference to each other. As you can see, with this straight piece of metal, it looks like I've done a pretty good job. The most difficult part when starting out as a woodworker is getting flat pieces of wood. You know, construction lumber that you buy at the hardware store may not be as flat as you might think. The other viable option is to have a commercial shop do this flattening for you. And since I don't have any around me, I'm gonna have to do this the hard way. I made this impromptu track saw from a circular saw and this flat piece to get a 90-degree edge in reference to the other plane of the wood. But to make consistent strips or square stock from this lumber, I need to make a table saw. So here you can see me designing my own table saw, which is pretty shoddy, but it's gonna do the job just fine. It's basically a tiny table with a circular saw screwed onto the bottom. And as always, safety is the first priority. So as you can see, I've taped down the safety switch and it's time to go deep. This is the monster that I've created. Let's see if this is usable. I'll try with a very, very thin strip of wood on one edge. At this point, I have 2 parallel planes and one 90-degree edge. So I'm running that 90-degree edge on this flat piece of aluminum extrusion and trying to be as consistent with my cuts as I can be. I'm happy with this result. So I'm going to set the thickness of the cut to the thickness of the wood. This will mean that I will get square cross sections. I'm fixing my fence with these wood clamps on both sides. And there you go. Now the thickness is perfectly set. So I'm gonna make a couple of cuts and hopefully I will end up with nice square pieces of wood. Okay, little trouble there. I almost had some really nasty kickback and I need to stop that. So I'm gonna use this first strip that the table saw kind of cut into as an impromptu holder, and that's much nicer. Now I'm getting consistent strips. I need to make exactly 12 of these pieces and then cut them to size. So I'm gonna make like 15 and select the best ones. After a bunch of work, I've ended up with these beautiful strips of wood. Now there's a bit of cleanup needed, but after that this will be usable for some Japanese joinery. The main things that I'm looking out for is pieces where the table saw kind of cut into the wood, and at first I'm gonna use something a bit harsh like a rasp and then move on to some softer sandpaper to get these things cleaned up and consistent with each other. So about a half an hour's worth of work later, I have these beautiful pieces of wood and a super dusty workshop. I seriously need to invest in a good vacuum cleaner because my household one can't keep up. I received this beautiful Japanese saw and 2 others as a Christmas present from my dad, and I've been itching to try it out ever since. I have just little practice with these, so this means that I will be making a couple of mistakes along the way. I hope you can appreciate that I'm trying hard and I'm trying to be as precise as I can be. But these saws are quite difficult to use, but if I get it right, then it will look awesome. Thankfully, I have a couple of extra pieces of wood, and this means that there is room for mess-ups. This is pretty monotone work. You need to do the same exact thing 24 times in a row and repeat all the steps in a precise manner. And this is pretty taxing on the mind, but can also be a bit relaxing. This is just the first end of each piece, and now I need to make some precise measurements so that the pieces of wood will be the exact same length. And for this, I'm going to be using a technique that I've learned on some other YouTube channel. And basically, I'm cutting a master piece of lumber and then measuring to that master piece of lumber. So I'm gonna guide my saw blade with one of the ends of the masterpiece, and this will make sure that they are both the same length. As you can see, they are perfectly flat against each other, so I've succeeded. And here you go. There are 8 smaller pieces and 4 larger ones. Now real work can begin. The smaller ones are gonna make 2 square-shaped frames, and the larger ones are going to connect these 2 frames. A 3-way castle joint consists of 2 separate types of joinery. The first one is the frames. For the frames, I'm going to cut all ends of the small pieces like so. Basically, I need to make 4 saw cuts on these edges. That means 16 times 4 cuts, so 64 in total. I'm going to be using this 0.8mm saw blade. This is a Japanese blade that was mainly meant for cross-cutting, and I know I'm cutting along the grain right now, but I'm going to be doing a lot of cross-cutting with it, and I don't have a blade that is specifically for cutting along the grain. But since this wood is pretty soft, I think I can get away with it. After cutting, not much cleanup is necessary, but still some is needed to make every joint fit perfectly. But as I've mentioned before, I'm still just a beginner, so some mistakes are going to happen and I can't do anything about that. But what I want to achieve with this project is to build up confidence with these saw blades and to be sure when I want to make something precise that I can do it. And I know my boundaries and I know where my precision is going to fall flat. That's one end done. Now only 15 more to go, starting with this one. Hopefully by the time that I'm finished, everything will have improved and my cuts will be better. So I'm going to mark each piece of wood with its corresponding number, and check how much my precision improved along the way. Hopefully by the end of the project I will have built up some confidence and I will have made something that looks good. Pretty nice progress, if I do say so myself. I'm starting to build up a muscle memory with the Japanese saw, but I want you to be the judge. So, take a look at this next shot and decide if this is precise enough for you. On 7 and 8 you can see that my precision is a bit better than on the first couple of goes. So let's clean up all the little mistakes with a straight edge. I'm trying to shave off small pieces of wood at a time so that I can get a precise fit when I want to assemble the pieces together. Next, I'm going to add a small bevel to each edge of the joint that I have cut. This will make a bit bigger gap, but it will ensure that my pieces fit together nice and snug. The next step is to assemble a square frame. For this, I need to join 2 of these edge pieces together. And for this, I'm going to cut U-grooves into each of them. To correct any errors, I'm going to fit them all to each other. This will mean that they can only go together one way, and it's quite like a jigsaw puzzle. But I hope that this will make it a bit more precise than if I had just cut them down to measurement. Fitting wood in relationship with each other makes some small mistakes. As you can see, my lines are not perfectly parallel, but nothing that a little straight edge work can't solve. This will mean that there will be a bit bigger of a gap, but that's tolerable if my structure can stand and support a plant pot. For the next reference cut, I'm going to place the flap into a U-groove and then mark out where the 2 meet. This will ensure that they are precise and the gap is minimized. At least that's what I hope to achieve. I could have done a better job planning out this project. I'm saying this because I think that working on these small pieces of wood is significantly more difficult than if I had just bought large pieces of construction lumber and then worked on them. Since any small mistake I make will look magnified since my project is so small. But there is also an upside. This keeps me sharp and makes me want to improve my skills. Since this project is so difficult, I really need to man up to the task, and that's always what I enjoy. That's why I created this YouTube channel, because I want to try new things and I want to succeed on the first go. So hopefully by now you have a good idea about what this video is about, and if you enjoy this content that I make, then I would like to ask you to subscribe. I'm on the verge of hitting 100 subscribers, which is really cool and really awesome. And I have something pretty big planned for the 100 sub special. As you can see, I'm completing the first frame. And the second frame is going to be similar, but I will be a bit more precise, hopefully. So there you go. Now, next up is joining them together. This is going to be the most difficult part of the whole project, since I need to cut 4 small columns that fit into each of those small little grooves created by the joint edge pieces. Again, these are all directionally custom fit, so this means that they may not look perfectly precise, but they fit their respective corners. I start off by making 4 cuts along the grain of the wood. Then I'm going to move on to chiseling them out. I only have this really large chisel, so I'm going to mark the bottom of each column and then hit it out with a small screwdriver and hope that the wood doesn't break in the process. First, I tried introducing some tension along the grain. That didn't work, so I moved on to cross-grain hitting. And this did the trick and the piece popped out. After popping out all 4 of them, only the middle column is left. And this I'm going to hammer out with this small hammer. Quite tricky to get out. And there it goes. Now I need to repeat this process 8 times. So this was the first, now 7 more to go. But first, let's check the fit. Wow, nice. So it works in principle, and the first one turned out great, so let's move on to all the rest. And this took a bunch of time, like seriously twice as long as the previous one. But I enjoyed the process and it was pretty fun. Well, it was pretty fun up till this point. I definitely lost some precision along the way because these joints take way more time and need to be way more precise to look good. So my mistakes are getting larger and larger by the second. And I really don't want that. When I started cutting this piece of wood, I didn't realize that I was cutting into a knot, and I broke off one of the corners. And I managed to break it into like 5 pieces. So this is going to be a serious plane to assemble. But I don't want to start the whole process again. I got way too confident at this point, so I threw out all the extra pieces of wood. And now I need to do some reconstructive surgery. That is a mistake that I need to learn, and I will make sure in my future projects to keep anything extra till the end of the project. Now, there's nothing fancy going on here. I'm just applying some wood glue and waiting for it to dry, applying some wood glue, waiting for it to dry, and then again and again and again. And this is a serious pain, especially having to find every single piece that broke off, since my room is currently scattered with wood fragments. It may sound stupid because I'm creating a subpar product, but still I'm proud of my stupid mistake, because this shows that it was handcrafted, it was dumb, and I have room for improvement. So this is what it looks like. I know, not the best, but it fits decently, so I'm gonna go with it. And each time I look at my cactus, I will be reminded not to make the same mistake again. Next time I will pay closer attention to material selection. And even though I've messed up one of these rods, every single other one I've nailed perfectly, at least by my standards. So let's put this thing together. I'm going to start out with the bottom frame and then gradually add each leg to each corner, because they are obviously all fitted together in a certain orientation and in a certain order, so you cannot exchange parts. I chose this method because this would hide my mistakes that I made along the way, and I hope that it shows in the final result. As you can see, I've managed to nail some pretty tight fits along the entire project, and I'm pretty proud of that. But still, there is obviously room for improvement, like better planning and a bit better execution. I purposefully chose a very difficult project. Like 3-way joinery is not a beginner woodworking project. But still, I think that I have improved significantly during the course of building this flower pot holder. And even though it doesn't really serve that big of a purpose, it's still going to look good on my table and also will raise my cactus to bask in the warm rays of sun. After making like 100 cuts, I think I have improved my saw skills, and I hope that it will show in my next projects. So keep in mind when you're writing your angry comment at how crappy the project looks that I've just begun my journey as a woodworker. By the way, I'm making a stylistic choice here. I want to keep every single exposed stud. This is by design. I seriously don't want to use my saws to cut them off, because I think that it adds some value and some character to the project. It kind of looks like an old Japanese building with the struts hanging out. I think it looks great. And if you don't like it, that's your opinion. You're absolutely entitled to it, but I like it this way. That's it. All done. Now, check out my big cactus. Thank you guys so much for watching my video. I'm almost at 100 subscribers, and it would help out a lot if you click that subscribe button. That's all I have for you today. See you next time. Bye bye.